The emergency beacon pierced through the cosmic void like a desperate scream. Commander Zexhai of the Galactic Coalition Cruiser Meridian's Hope felt his four hearts sink as the distress signal reached their communication array. The message was brief, coded in the universal emergency frequency that meant only one thing: complete disaster. "Sir, we're receiving a Priority 1 distress call from Kepler Station," reported Communications Officer Velterra, her normally steady voice trembling with barely controlled panic. "The signal is, it's bad, Commander. Really bad." Zexhai's elongated fingers danced across his command console, bringing up the decoded message on the main display. The bridge fell silent as the crew read the transmission that had traveled across 17 light-years to reach them. Kepler Station under siege. Hostile forces overwhelming. Civilian population trapped. Station defenses failing. Require immediate military assistance. Any available coalition forces respond. Time critical. Asterisk the message repeated 3 times before cutting to static. Zexhai's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the implications. Kepler Station wasn't just any outpost. It housed over 2 million civilians from 47 different species, serving as the primary trade hub for the entire Outer Rim territories. If it fell, the economic and humanitarian disaster would ripple across half the galaxy. Navigation. Plot a course for Kepler Station. Maximum warp. Zexhai commanded, his training overriding the fear that threatened to paralyze him. Communications. Send word to Coalition Command. Tell them we're responding to the distress call. "Sir," Velterra's voice cracked slightly. "There's something else. The signal, it's 18 hours old. Whatever's happening there, we might already be too late." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. 18 hours was an eternity in a battle situation. Stations could fall in minutes when faced with overwhelming force, and Kepler Station, despite its size and importance, wasn't a military installation. Its defenses were designed to deter pirates and smugglers, not a full-scale assault. As the Meridian's Hope engaged its faster-than-light drives, Zexhai found himself thinking about the last time he'd visited Kepler Station. It had been during a routine patrol 6 months ago. The massive, rotating habitat had been bustling with life, its corridors filled with traders, families, and workers from across the galaxy. The thought of all those innocent beings facing an unknown threat made his stomach churn. "Sir, incoming transmission from Coalition Command," Velterra announced, breaking him from his dark thoughts. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Korthvel, the Coalition's military commander for this sector. The Admiral's usually pristine uniform looked wrinkled, and his normally perfect grooming appeared hastily arranged. "Commander Zexhai, I've received your transmission." The Admiral's voice carried the weight of terrible news. "I'm afraid the situation at Kepler Station is worse than we initially thought. Long-range sensors detected massive explosions in the system approximately 14 hours ago. We've lost all contact with the station." Zexhai felt his crew's morale plummet around him. "Sir, what are your orders? Should we continue our approach?" "Negative, Commander. I'm pulling you back to defend the Proxima colonies. We can't risk losing another ship to whatever destroyed Kepler Station." The Admiral paused, his expression growing even more grim. "I've already dispatched the 5th Fleet to investigate, but they won't arrive for another 36 hours. Admiral, with respect, there might still be survivors. We're only 6 hours out from the station. We could—" "I said negative, Commander." The Admiral's voice cut through the bridge like a plasma blade. "You have a crew of 300. I won't sacrifice them on a suicide mission. Return to Proxima immediately." "That's an order." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zexhai stared at the empty holographic display, his mind racing. He understood the Admiral's position from a tactical standpoint, but the thought of abandoning potential survivors went against everything he'd sworn to protect when he joined the Coalition. "Sir," his first officer, Subcommander Rixtal, spoke quietly. "The crew is waiting for orders." Zexhai looked around the bridge at his officers. These beings had served with him for 3 years, through pirate raids and diplomatic missions. They trusted him to make the right decision, even when that decision might cost them everything. "Helm, maintain course for Kepler Station," he said finally. "Sir." Riksdal's feathered crest rose in surprise. The Admiral's orders were clear. "The Admiral's orders were based on incomplete information," Zexai replied, standing from his command chair. "We're the closest ship to Kepler Station. If there are survivors, we might be their only hope. I won't abandon 2 million civilians because it's safer to follow orders." The bridge crew looked uncertain, but none voiced objections. They knew their commander, and they knew that he'd never ask them to take a risk he wasn't willing to share. 5 hours later, they dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler system. What they found defied explanation. Kepler Station, the massive wheel-shaped habitat that had housed millions, was gone. In its place, a debris field stretched across several thousand kilometers of space. Twisted metal, frozen atmosphere, and the scattered remains of what had once been homes and businesses drifted in the cosmic void. "Mother of Stars," whispered Velterra. "What could have done this?" The tactical display painted a picture of absolute devastation. The station hadn't just been destroyed, it had been systematically torn apart. The debris patterns suggested multiple explosions occurring simultaneously across different sections of the habitat. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures," reported the tactical officer, a young Zelanti named Primos whose usually bright blue skin had turned a sickly green. "Whatever did this used weapons I've never seen before. The energy readings they're off the scale." Zexai studied the tactical display, trying to make sense of the destruction. "Any signs of the attackers?" "Negative, sir." But Primos hesitated. "Sir, I'm reading some unusual signatures from the outer system. It's almost like there's something there, but our sensors can't get a clear reading." Before Zexai could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. The proximity sensors had detected something massive emerging from behind Kepler's primary moon. "Sir, contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Kremos called out, his voice tight with fear. It's huge." The main display shifted to show the emerging threat. What appeared on screen made several bridge crew members gasp in horror. The ship, if it could be called a ship, was unlike anything in the Coalition database. Roughly pyramidal in shape, it stretched nearly 8 kilometers from base to apex. Its surface appeared to be composed of some dark, organic-looking material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Sir, it's scanning us," Velterra reported, her hands flying over her console. "The scan is incredibly invasive. It's like they're looking right through our hull." The alien ship began to move toward them with deliberate, predatory grace. Its approach wasn't hurried, suggesting confidence that the Meridian's hope posed no threat. "All hands to battle stations," Zexai ordered, though he knew their weapons would likely prove inadequate against something that had destroyed an entire space station. "Velterra, send an emergency transmission to Coalition Command. Tell them what we've found." "Sir, they're jamming our communications," she replied, panic creeping into her voice. "All frequencies are being blocked." The alien ship was now close enough that they could make out details of its hull. What they had initially taken for smooth surface was actually covered in what looked like symbols or markings, though their sensors couldn't determine if they were technological or decorative in nature. "Sir, incoming transmission," Velterra announced, surprise replacing fear in her voice. "It's not from the alien ship. It's coming from the debris field. Put it through." The main display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a face that was both familiar and shocking. Captain Sarah Chun of the Coalition merchant vessel Lucky Strike appeared on screen, but she looked haggard and exhausted. Behind her, they could see what appeared to be the interior of a damaged ship. "Coalition vessel, this is Captain Chun. If you can hear this, you need to get out of here immediately. The Devourers, that's what we're calling them. They don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They just destroy everything in their path. Captain Chun, this is Commander Zexai of the Meridian's Hope. What happened here? Where are the station survivors?" Chen's face crumbled. "Gone. All of them." The Devourers hit the station 6 hours after we sent the distress call. They had some kind of weapon that just melted through the hull like it was paper. The station's shields might as well have been tissue paper. How did you survive? Purelak. My ship was docked at the outer ring when they attacked. The explosion blew us clear, but our engines are dead. We've been hiding in the debris field, but they keep sending out scout ships to look for survivors. Chen's voice grew urgent. Commander, you have to warn the Coalition. These things aren't pirates or raiders. There's something else entirely. Something that wants to wipe out everything in their path. Before Zexhai could respond, new alarms sounded throughout the bridge. Sir, the alien ship is powering weapons, Kremos reported. Energy levels are climbing rapidly. Captain Shun, can you move your ship? Zexhai asked quickly. Negative. We're running on emergency power only. Commander, save yourselves. Don't let our deaths be meaningless. Get word back to... The transmission cut off as a brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the alien ship toward the debris field. Where the beam struck, matter simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris. The section of wreckage that had contained Captain Shun and her crew was simply gone, as if it had never existed. Mother of all stars, Rixtal whispered. What kind of weapon can do that? The alien ship was now turning its attention back to the Meridian's hope. Zexhai realized they had seconds before that terrible weapon would turn on them. All power to engines, he commanded. Get us out of here. Maximum warp. Sir, warp drive is still charging, the helmsman reported. We need another 30 seconds. 30 seconds they didn't have. The alien ship's weapon array was glowing with the same terrible energy that had just erased Captain Chen's ship. Evasive maneuvers, Zexhai ordered, though he knew it would only delay the inevitable. The Meridian's hope was a cruiser designed for long-range patrols, not dogfighting with something that outmassed them 50-1. The ship banked hard to starboard just as the alien weapon fired. The beam passed so close to their hull that the bridge lights flickered from the electromagnetic interference. Warp drive online, the helmsman announced. Jump us out of here, any direction, Zexhai commanded. Just get us away from... His words were cut off as the ship lurched violently. Warning lights flashed throughout the bridge as they were suddenly yanked out of warp by some kind of interdiction field. Sir, they've got some kind of warp dampener, the helmsman reported. We can't jump to FTL. The alien ship was closing distance rapidly, and Zexhai realized with growing horror that they were trapped. Whatever these devourers were, they had technology far beyond anything the Coalition possessed. Sir, Volterra called out, her voice filled with confusion rather than fear. I'm detecting another ship approaching the system. The energy signature is unusual. Another devourer ship? No, sir. This one's different. Smaller. The configuration doesn't match anything in our database, but the energy signature. She paused, checking her readings again. Sir, it's moving incredibly fast. Faster than anything should be able to move in normal space. On the main display, a new contact appeared at the edge of the system. It was indeed smaller than the Devourer vessel, roughly the size of a Coalition destroyer, but its approach speed was impossible. No ship could maintain such velocity without tearing itself apart. The new arrival didn't slow down as it approached the combat zone. Instead, it seemed to accelerate further, its trajectory aimed directly at the massive alien pyramid. Sir, the new ship is hailing us, Volterra announced. Put them through. The display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that made the entire bridge crew freeze in shock. The figure on screen was bipedal and roughly humanoid, but unlike any species in the Coalition database. Its skin was a pale pink color, and instead of the scaled, feathered, or chitinous hide common to most spacefaring species, this being appeared to have soft, vulnerable-looking flesh. Most disturbing of all, its mouth was filled with what looked like bone-white predator teeth. When the being spoke, its voice was calm and confident, showing no trace of the fear that should have been evident when facing a ship capable of destroying space stations. Coalition vessel. This is Captain Martinez of the Terran Defense Force ship Retribution. We received your distress call and came as soon as possible. Please maintain your current position while we deal with the hostile contact. Zexhai found his voice after a moment of stunned silence. Captain Martinez, that ship is armed with weapons capable of destroying matter at the molecular level. You should withdraw immediately and call for reinforcements. The human, for that was apparently what this being was called, actually smiled, revealing even more of those predatory teeth. Appreciate the warning, Commander, but we've got this handled. Besides, we've been looking forward to a good fight. It's been a boring week. The transmission ended, leaving the Coalition bridge crew staring at the display in disbelief. This human had just stated that it was looking forward to fighting something that had just effortlessly destroyed a space station housing 2 million people. Sir, the human ship is moving to attack position, Kremos reported, his voice filled with awe. It's not even attempting evasive maneuvers. It's flying straight at the Devourer's ship. On the tactical display, they watched in fascination and horror as the tiny human ship accelerated directly toward the massive alien pyramid. The Devourer vessel, perhaps surprised by this suicidal attack, seemed to hesitate for a moment before bringing its terrible weapon to bear on the approaching threat. The energy beam that had effortlessly erased Captain Chen's ship lanced out toward the human vessel. But instead of being vaporized, the human ship did something impossible. It seemed to twist and blur, and suddenly it was no longer where the beam was aimed. The weapon passed harmlessly through empty space while the human ship continued its approach from a slightly different angle. How did they do that? Rixtal asked, voicing what everyone on the bridge was thinking. Unknown, Kremos replied, studying his instruments frantically. For just a moment, our sensors detected what looked like a brief dimensional displacement, but that's impossible. No ship can manipulate space-time like that. The human ship had now closed to within weapons range of the Devourer vessel. What happened next would be burned into the memory of every Coalition crew member present for the rest of their lives. The human ship opened fire, but not with energy weapons like most civilized species used. Instead, it launched what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible velocities. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. Each one seemed to phase in and out of normal space as it flew, making them impossible to intercept with point defense systems. When the projectiles struck the Devourer's ship's hull, the results were devastating. The dark, organic-looking armor that had seemed so impenetrable began to buckle and tear. Explosions bloomed across the alien ship's surface as secondary systems overloaded. The Devourer ship tried to bring its main weapon around to target the human vessel, but the smaller ship was moving in patterns that defied physics. One moment, it would be below the alien ship, the next it would appear above it, always staying just out of range of the massive weapons targeting arc. Sir, Velterra's voice was filled with amazement. The human ship is actually winning. As if to confirm her statement, another barrage of kinetic projectiles slammed into the Devourer ship's hull. This time, the impact triggered a massive explosion that tore through several sections of the alien vessel. The pyramid-shaped ship began to list as its structural integrity failed. The human ship pressed its attack, moving with deadly precision to exploit the damage it had caused. More kinetic rounds found their mark, each impact causing progressively more damage to the alien vessel's hull. Finally, with a flash of light that briefly outshone the system's star, the Devourer ship's main reactor went critical. The massive vessel was consumed in a fireball that could be seen from several light minutes away. In the sudden silence that followed, the human ship turned toward the Meridian's Hope and began a slow approach. Coalition vessel, this is Captain Martinez again. Sorry about the light show. These Devourer ships always go out with a bang. Is your ship damaged? Zexhai realized that his mandibles had been hanging open in shock. He closed them with an effort and found his voice. No, Captain, we're undamaged. That was impressive. All in a day's work, Commander. We've been tracking this particular Devourer fleet for 3 days. They're part of a larger incursion into this sector. We estimate there are at least 20 more ships of similar size operating in the area. The implications of that statement hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. If there were 20 more ships like the one they just witnessed destroyed, and if they all had the same capabilities, then the Coalition was facing a threat beyond anything they could handle. Captain Martinez, Zexai, said carefully, "I don't mean to be rude, but I've never heard of the Terran Defense Force. What species are you? And where do you come from?" The human smile returned, and once again those predatory teeth were visible. "Humans, Kumande. We're from a little planet called Earth, about 200 light years from here. As for the Terran Defense Force, well, let's just say we're new to the neighborhood." 200 light years, Rixtal whispered. "That's beyond the edge of known space." "The Coalition has never made contact with your species," Zexai said. "How did you learn about our distress call?" "We've been monitoring Coalition communications for some time," Martinez replied. "When we detected the Devourer incursion into this sector, we knew it was only a matter of time before they encountered Coalition space. We figured we might as well lend a hand." The casual way the humans spoke about monitoring Coalition communications should have been alarming, but given what they just witnessed, Zexai found he was more curious than concerned. "Captain, I need to ask, how were you able to defeat that ship so easily? Our sensors indicated it possessed technology far beyond Coalition capabilities." Martinez's expression grew more serious. "The Devourers are dangerous, Commander, but they're not invincible. They rely heavily on their ability to intimidate enemies into submission. When they encounter someone willing to fight back, they're not as effective." It was a diplomatic answer that didn't really explain anything. But before Zexai could ask for clarification, Velterra spoke up. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple contacts entering the system. They're coming in fast." The tactical display updated to show 5 more Devourer ships dropping out of warp at the edge of the system. These ships were even larger than the first, their massive pyramidal hulls bristling with the same terrible weapons that had destroyed Kepler Station. "Well," Martinez's voice came over the comm, still sounding completely unconcerned. "Looks like the cavalry's arrived. Commander, you might want to back your ship off to a safe distance. This could get a bit messy." Zexai watched in amazement as the single human ship turned to face 5 vessels that collectively outmassed it by nearly 300 to 1. Any rational being would have retreated, called for reinforcements, or at least attempted to negotiate. Instead, Captain Martinez seemed eager to engage. "Captain," Zexai called over the comm, "there are 5 of them." "You can't possibly—" "Commander," Martinez interrupted, and his voice carried a note that made every being on the Coalition bridge shiver involuntarily. "You asked what species we are. Let me give you a proper answer. We're humans. We're from a planet where everything wants to kill you, where the weather can freeze you solid or boil you alive, where the local predators hunt in packs, and the plants are toxic. We've been fighting for survival since we crawled out of the primordial ooze." The human ship was accelerating toward the incoming Devourer fleet, its impossible maneuvers already beginning as it prepared for combat. "We've fought wars that lasted centuries, conquered diseases that should have wiped us out, and turned a Deathworld into a garden. These Devourers—" Martinez's voice carried a sound that was somewhere between laughter and a growl. "They're just another Tuesday for us." The last thing Zexai heard before the battle began was Captain Martinez's voice, calm and professional, speaking to what was apparently his crew. "All right, people, let's show these pyramid-building wannabes what happens when you mess with Earth's neighbors. Weapons free. All targets are hostile. Try to leave enough debris for the Coalition science teams to study." As the first human weapon discharges lit up space like miniature stars, Zexai realized that the galaxy had just been introduced to something entirely new. Something that didn't just survive in a universe full of dangers, something that thrived in it. The Coalition had requested backup. What had arrived were Deathworld humans. And the Devourers were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing in a galaxy was something that looked completely harmless. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for decades to come, though most instructors would struggle to explain how a single ship accomplished what should have been impossible. Commander Zexai watched through the Meridian's Hope's sensors as the human vessel Retribution engaged 5 Devourer ships simultaneously. What he witnessed challenged everything he thought he knew about space combat. The human ship moved like a living creature rather than a mechanical construct. It twisted and spun through three-dimensional space in ways that should have liquefied any crew inside, yet somehow it maintained perfect weapons accuracy throughout its impossible maneuvers. "Sir, the human ship just pulled 17 gravities in that last turn," reported Kremos, his voice filled with disbelief. "No known species can survive that kind of acceleration. Maybe they use some kind of inertial dampening technology we haven't seen before," Rixtal suggested, though he sounded doubtful. The Devourer ships had spread out into a standard hunter-killer formation, trying to box in their smaller opponent and bring their overwhelming firepower to bear. Their energy weapons carved brilliant lines through space, but somehow the human ship was never where the beams expected it to be. "How are they doing that?" Velterra asked, studying her sensor readings. "Our computers show the ship should have been hit at least 12 times by now." Before anyone could answer, the Retribution demonstrated another impossible capability. As 3 Devourer ships fired simultaneously at its position, the human vessel seemed to blur and, suddenly, appeared several thousand kilometers away, completely outside the target zone. "That's not possible," Kremos stated flatly. "They just exceeded light speed in normal space." The physics alone should have torn their ship apart. The human ship's counterattack began almost immediately. Instead of the single kinetic rounds it had used against the first Devourer vessel, the Retribution now launched what appeared to be some kind of guided projectiles. These weapons moved with their own impossible agility, weaving through defensive fire as they sought their targets. When the first projectile struck a Devourer ship's hull, the result was unlike anything the Coalition crew had ever seen. Instead of a simple explosion, the impact seemed to create a cascade of secondary reactions that spread across the alien vessel's surface like a virus. Sections of the hull began to buckle and collapse as if the ship's own structural integrity was turning against it. "What kind of weapon can do that?" Rixtal Guisperth. "Sir," Kremos called out urgently, "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around the human ship. It's like they're manipulating local space-time, too." His words were cut off as the Retribution performed another impossible maneuver, this time seeming to fold space around itself to avoid a concentrated barrage from all 5 Devourer ships. Captain Martinez's voice crackled over the comm. "Coalition vessel, you might want to move back another few thousand kilometers. We're about to try something that might get a bit explosive." "Captain," Zexai called back, "what are you planning?" "Standard human diplomatic solution," Martinez replied, and there was definitely amusement in his voice. "When in doubt, use more explosives." The human ship suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvers and hung motionless in space directly between the 5 Devourer vessels. The alien ships immediately began converging on the stationary target, their energy weapons charging for what would obviously be a devastating coordinated strike. "He's just sitting there," Velterra said in amazement. "Why isn't he moving?" "Sir, the human ship's energy readings just spiked off the scale," Kremos reported. "Whatever they're charging up, it's drawing more power than should be possible for a ship that size." The Devourer ships opened fire simultaneously, 5 massive energy beams converging on the human vessel's position. For a moment, the Retribution was completely hidden by the combined firepower of the alien fleet. Then, something unprecedented happened. The energy beams simply stopped. They hung in space around the human ship like frozen lightning, crackling and sparking but unable to advance any further. "Impossible," Rixtal breted. "No ship can generate a defensive field that powerful." Captain Martinez's voice came over the comm, still maddeningly calm. "Thank you for the energy donation, gentlemen. Allow me to return it with interest." The human ship pulsed once, and suddenly, all that captured energy exploded outward in a spherical wave that expanded at near light speed. The wave passed harmlessly through the Meridian's Hope, but When it reached the Devourer's ships, the results were catastrophic. All 5 alien vessels simply came apart. Not explosively, but as if every molecular bond in their hulls had suddenly decided to give up. They dissolved into clouds of component atoms that dispersed into space like metallic snow. The silence that followed was deafening. "Sir," Kremos finally managed to say, "all 5 Devourer ships have been destroyed." Total time for the engagement was 7 minutes and 34 seconds. 7 minutes. A single human ship had destroyed 5 vessels that could have conquered entire star systems in less time than it took to conduct a routine cargo transfer. "Captain Martinez," Zexhai called over the comm. "That was extraordinary." "How did you—" "Trade secrets, Commander," the human replied cheerfully. "Though I appreciate the compliment. Now, we need to talk about the bigger picture here. These Devourers aren't just random raiders. They're part of a coordinated invasion force." "How do you know this?" "Because we've been tracking them for the past 6 months. They're systematically moving through this region of space, targeting specific types of worlds and installations. Kepler Station wasn't just a convenient target. It was specifically chosen for destruction." The implications of that statement sent chills through the Coalition bridge crew. If the Devourers were conducting a planned invasion rather than random raids, it meant they had intelligence about Coalition space and military capabilities. "Captain, I need to get this information back to Coalition Command immediately," Zexhai said. "Can you transmit your data on the Devourer fleet?" "Already done, Commander. I sent a full tactical analysis to your computer systems while we were talking. But there's something else you need to know. The Devourers aren't the real threat." "What do you mean?" Martinez's tone became more serious. "They're advanced scouts. The main invasion force is still gathering at a staging point about 50 light-years from here. We estimate they'll be ready to move into Coalition space within the next 2 weeks." Zexhai felt his foreheart skip a beat. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate? About 3,000 vessels, ranging from destroyer class to dreadnoughts the size of small moons." The number hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The entire Coalition Navy had fewer than 800 ships of all classes spread across dozens of sectors. Against 3,000 Devourer vessels, they wouldn't stand chance. "Commander," Martinez continued, "I'm going to be direct with you. Your Coalition is about to face an extinction-level threat. Your current military doctrine and technology won't be sufficient to stop them. Are you offering assistance?" Zexhai asked, though he hardly dared to hope. "That's exactly what I'm offering. The Terran Defense Force has been preparing for this threat for some time. We'd like to propose a joint operation to deal with the Devourer fleet before they can launch their invasion." Rixtal leaned close to Zexhai and whispered, "Sir, we don't know anything about these humans. How can we trust them?" It was a fair point. The humans had appeared out of nowhere, demonstrated impossible technology, and were now offering to save the Coalition from a threat that the Coalition had been unaware of until minutes ago. Under normal circumstances, it would be reasonable to be suspicious. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Captain Martinez," Zexhai said carefully, "what exactly are you proposing?" "A meeting between your military leadership and ours. We can share intelligence about the Devourer fleet and coordinate our response. The humans are willing to commit significant resources to this fight, but we'll need Coalition cooperation to pull it off." "I'll need to clear this with Coalition Command," Zexhai replied. "Understood. In the meantime, I'm going to leave one of our ships here to keep an eye on things." The Devourers sometimes send follow-up scouts to investigate when their teams go missing. As if summoned by his words, another ship materialized near the human vessel. This one was different from the Retribution, larger and more angular, with a hull that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "That's the Determination, one of our heavy cruisers," Martinez explained. "Captain Rodriguez will coordinate with you if any more hostiles show up. I need to return to our staging area and prepare for the main operation." "Staging area?" Zexhai asked. "The Terran Defense Force has been building up forces near the edge of your space for the past 3 months. We've been waiting for the right moment to make contact with the Coalition. This Devourer incursion just moved up our timeline a bit. The casual admission that humans have been operating near Coalition space for months without being detected was almost as shocking as their combat capabilities. How had they remained hidden from Coalition sensors? How many ships did they have? What other capabilities were they hiding? Commander, Martinez's voice interrupted his thoughts. I know you have a lot of questions. Most of them will be answered at the meeting I'm proposing. For now, I need you to get that intelligence data back to your superiors as quickly as possible. Time is not on our side. Understood, Captain. Where would this meeting take place? We'll transmit coordinates once your leadership agrees to the meeting. Somewhere neutral where both sides can feel comfortable. And, Commander, you might want to prepare your people for some surprises. Humans are, well, we're not quite what most species expect. The transmission ended, leaving the Meridians hope alone with a human cruiser determination. The new ship took up position near the debris field that had once been Kepler Station, apparently beginning some kind of systematic patrol pattern. Sir, Valterra said quietly, what do we do now? Zexhai looked around at his crew, seeing his own mixture of fear and hope reflected in their faces. They had witnessed something that would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The question was whether that change would save them or destroy them. Set course for Coalition Command, he ordered. Maximum warp. And, Valterra, prepare a full report of everything we've witnessed. Include all sensor data and recordings. Sir, they'll never believe it, Rixtal said. A single ship destroying 6 Devourer vessels? Technology that violates known physics? An unknown species offering to save us from an invasion we didn't know was coming. They'll believe it when they see the sensor data, Zexhai replied grimly. And they'll have to believe it, because if Captain Martinez is right, we don't have any other choice. As the Meridian's hope jumped to warp, leaving the human ship to guard the ruins of Kepler Station, none of the crew could shake the feeling that they had just witnessed the beginning of something momentous. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes, when you called for backup, what arrived was something far more dangerous than whatever you were trying to escape from. 3 days later, Admiral Korthval stood in the Coalition's primary war room, staring at the holographic display that showed the intelligence data from the human ship Retribution. Around the massive table, representatives from 37 member species studied the same data with growing alarm. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Ambassador Velmoth, the Coalition's senior diplomatic representative. This human captain claims that a fleet of 3,000 enemy ships is preparing to invade our space. And he's offering to help us stop them? That's correct, Ambassador, Admiral Korthval replied. Commander Zexhai's report has been verified by our best intelligence analysts. The tactical data appears genuine, and the sensor readings from the battle are consistent across all our instruments. And we're supposed to trust a species we've never encountered before, asked General Krixtal, the Coalition's chief military strategist. For all we know, these humans are working with the Devourers. If they were working with the Devourers, they wouldn't need to destroy 6 Devourer ships to maintain their cover, Admiral Korthval pointed out. The tactical analysis clearly shows that the humans possess technology far beyond anything the Devourers have demonstrated. Which brings up another concern, Ambassador Velmoth interjected. If these humans are so technologically advanced, what do they want from us? Why offer help instead of simply conquering us themselves? It was a question that had been troubling Admiral Korthval since he'd first read Commander Zexhai's report. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that suggested they could defeat the Coalition as easily as they had destroyed the Devourer ships. Why offer alliance instead of simply taking what they wanted? There's only one way to find out, he said finally. We accept their invitation to meet. That could be a trap, General Krixtal warned. We'd be putting our senior leadership at risk. Our senior leadership is already at risk, Admiral Korthval replied sharply. If this Devourer fleet is real, we're looking at the potential extinction of the Coalition. We can't afford to ignore any potential ally, no matter how suspicious the circumstances. The debate continued for several more hours, but eventually the decision was made. A small delegation would meet with the human representatives at coordinates they had provided, a neutral system roughly halfway between coalition space and the edge of known territory. Admiral Korthval would lead the delegation personally, along with Ambassador Velmoth and a small military staff. The meeting would take place aboard the coalition's newest diplomatic cruiser, the Harmony's Promise, with a full escort of 12 warships. As the coalition fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Korthval found himself thinking about Commander Zexhi's description of the human captain, a being that looked vulnerable and soft, but spoke with the confidence of an apex predator, a species that had evolved on what they called a Deathworld and viewed galaxy-threatening invasions as merely another Tuesday. The Admiral had fought in 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts during his 60-year career. He'd seen weapons that could shatter planets and shields that could deflect the energy of entire stars. But somehow, the casual confidence of Captain Martinez troubled him more than any conventional threat he'd ever faced. What kind of species developed the ability to manipulate space-time as easily as other beings use conventional propulsion? What kind of evolution produced predatory teeth in a supposedly intelligent species? And, most importantly, what did such beings consider acceptable losses when fighting for their allies? 2 days later, the coalition fleet dropped out of warp at the designated coordinates. What they found waiting for them redefined their understanding of the term fleet. The human ships stretched across several thousand cubic kilometers of space in perfect formation. There were hundreds of them, ranging from sleek vessels the size of coalition corvettes to massive constructs that dwarfed the coalition's largest dreadnoughts. But it wasn't the number of ships that shocked the coalition delegation. It was their design. Unlike the elegant curves and artistic flourishes common to most coalition vessels, the human ships were built with brutal efficiency. They looked like what they were, weapons designed by beings who had evolved in a universe that was actively trying to kill them. Mother of all stars, whispered Captain Velnix, the commanding officer of the Harmony's Promise. How many ships do they have? Admiral Korthval studied the tactical display, counting vessel signatures. Conservative estimate? 800 ships in visual range. But our sensors are detecting much larger formations beyond our scanning range. Sir, the communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. The main display flickered to life, revealing a human figure in what appeared to be a military uniform. This human was different from Captain Martinez, larger, with darker skin and graying hair that suggested advanced age. When it spoke, its voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command. Coalition Fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. Welcome to the Meridian System. I'm ready to receive your delegation aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Korthval blinked in surprise. The name was familiar. Admiral Chun. Any relation to Captain Sarah Chun of the merchant vessel Lucky Strike? The human's expression grew sad. She was my daughter, Admiral. Her sacrifice wasn't in vain. The intelligence she transmitted before her death helped us track the Devourer fleet to their staging area. The personal connection added weight to what was already a tense situation. This wasn't just about military cooperation. It was about revenge for the murder of 2 million coalition civilians and the daughter of the human admiral. Admiral Chun, I'm Admiral Korthval of the Coalition Navy. I'm prepared to beam over with my delegation. Actually, Admiral, if you don't mind, I prefer to meet aboard your ship. It will give me a chance to see Coalition technology up close. I'll shuttle over with a small staff. The request was unusual but not unreasonable. Within the hour, a human shuttle had docked with the Harmony's Promise. Admiral Korthval and his delegation met the human party in the main conference room. Admiral Sarah Chun was even more imposing in person than she had appeared on the view screen. She moved with the controlled grace of a predator, and her eyes seemed to take in every detail of the coalition ship's design. Behind her came 3 other humans, 2 in military uniforms and 1 in civilian clothes. Admiral Korthval, Chin said, extending a hand in what appeared to be a human greeting gesture. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. The Admiral tentatively grasped the offered hand, surprised by the strength of the human's grip. Admiral Chun, I must say, your fleet is impressive. How long have humans been active in this region of space? About 6 months, actively, Chun replied as she took a seat at the conference table. We've been monitoring coalition communications for about a year before that, trying to determine the best way to make contact. Why contact us at all? Ambassador Velmoth asked bluntly. Your technology clearly surpasses ours. You could have simply taken whatever you wanted. Admiral Chin smiled, and like Captain Martinez, she displayed those unsettling predatory teeth. Ambassador, humans learned a long time ago that conquest is expensive and temporary. Cooperation is much more efficient and profitable in the long run. She gestured to one of her staff members who activated a holographic projector. The display showed a three-dimensional map of local space, with fleet positions marked in different colors. The immediate problem, Chun continued, is this Devourer staging area. She indicated a region about 50 light-years from Coalition space. Our reconnaissance indicates approximately 3,000 ships of various classes, all preparing for a coordinated assault on Coalition territory. How did you detect them? General Krixtal asked. Coalition long-range sensors show nothing in that region. Human sensor technology operates on different principles than most species use, one of Chin's staff members explained. We can detect mass distributions and energy signatures that conventional sensors miss. The Devourers plan to attack in approximately 10 days, Admiral Chen continued. They're waiting for additional reinforcements from their main fleet, which is located somewhere beyond our current scanning range. Admiral Korthval studied the tactical display. What do you propose we do about it? Simple, Chen replied. We eliminate the staging area before they can launch their attack. 3,000 ships, General Krixtal said slowly. Even with your advanced technology, those odds seem overwhelming. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. General, let me tell you something about humans. We don't believe in fair fights. When we encounter a superior enemy, we don't match their strength, we exceed it. She manipulated the holographic display to show the entire region of space surrounding the Devourer staging area. Suddenly, the display was filled with thousands of new ship signatures. The Terran Defense Force has been preparing for this confrontation for over a year, Chen explained. What you see here is just the advanced fleet. Our main battle groups are already in position around the Devourer staging area. Ambassador Velmoth stared at the display in shock. How many ships do you have? For this operation? About 12,000 vessels of various classes. The number was staggering. The humans had assembled a fleet larger than anything seen since the Great War 3 centuries ago. What do you need from the coalition? Admiral Korthval asked. Logistical support, primarily, Chen replied. Some of our ships have been in deep space for months. We could use resupply stations and repair facilities. In exchange, we'll eliminate the Devourer threat and share our tactical intelligence about their capabilities. And after the Devourers are dealt with, Ambassador Velmoth asked carefully. After, Admiral Chun looked genuinely puzzled by the question. After we go home, humans have plenty of territory to develop. We're not interested in conquering the coalition. But surely you expect some kind of payment for your assistance, General Krixtal pressed. Admiral Chun exchanged glances with her staff members before answering. General, let me explain something about human psychology. We don't respond well to bullies. The Devourers have declared war on an entire region of space, murdering civilians and destroying peaceful installations. That makes them our enemies, regardless of whether they've directly threatened human space. She leaned forward, and suddenly the conference room felt much smaller. We're not doing this for payment or territory or political advantage. We're doing this because someone needs to stop them, and we have the capability to do so. It's really that simple. The coalition delegation exchanged uncertain looks. The human explanation was almost too straightforward to believe. In their experience, no species committed such massive resources without expecting some form of compensation. Admiral Chin, Ambassador Velmoth said carefully. What guarantees can you provide that human forces won't become a threat to Coalition space after the Devourers are eliminated? The question hung in the air for a long moment before Admiral Chen answered. Ambassador, let me ask you a question in return. Based on what you've seen of human capabilities, do you really think we would need to ask permission if we wanted to take Coalition territory? It was a sobering point. If humans could defeat a 3,000-ship Devourer fleet, they could certainly conquer the Coalition whenever they chose to do so. The Coalition Council will need to vote on any formal alliance, Admiral Korthval said. But I can provide you with the logistical support you need for this operation. That's all we ask, Admiral Chen replied. The battle begins in 72 hours. After that, the Devourer threat will be permanently eliminated. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Admiral Chen paused at the conference room door. Admiral Korthval, there's something else you should know about humans. We're very good at making friends, but we're even better at eliminating enemies. The Devourers made the mistake of attacking people under our protection. They're about to learn why that was a very poor decision. After the humans departed, the Coalition delegation sat in stunned silence for several minutes. What do you think? Admiral Korthval finally asked. I think, Ambassador Velmoth said slowly, that we're about to witness something that will change the balance of power in this entire region of space. General Kriegstall nodded grimly. The question is whether that change will benefit us or destroy us. As the Coalition fleet prepared to provide the promised logistical support, none of them could shake the feeling that they had just allied themselves with something far more dangerous than the threat they were trying to escape. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened the neighbors of a species that had evolved on a Deathworld. And the Devourers were about to discover that sometimes the most terrifying thing in the universe was something that smiled while it killed you. The Battle of the Meridian Expanse would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned that Earth's children were not to be underestimated. 72 hours after the meeting aboard the Harmony's Promise, the largest space battle in recorded history began not with fanfare or formal declarations, but with a simple message broadcast across all Devourer communication frequencies. Attention Devourer fleet, came Admiral Chen's voice, calm and professional as if she were ordering lunch. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. You're currently occupying space claimed by the Coalition, our allies. You have murdered civilians under our protection. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. This is your only warning. The response from the Devourer fleet was immediate and predictable. 3,000 ships began powering weapons and, moving into attack formation, their massive pyramidal hulls bristling with the same terrible energy weapons that had destroyed Kepler Station. Admiral Chun waited exactly 61 seconds before giving the order that would end the Devourer threat forever. All ships, execute Operation Sledgehammer. What happened next redefined the concept of overwhelming force. The space around the Devourer staging area suddenly erupted with human ships. They didn't decloak or drop out of warp. They simply materialized as if they had been hiding in dimensions the Devourers couldn't detect. 12,000 human vessels appeared simultaneously, surrounding the Devourer fleet in a perfect spherical formation that left no avenue for escape. Commander Zexhai, observing from the Coalition supply station 40 light-years away, watched through long-range sensors as the human fleet revealed itself. Even at this distance, the tactical display was staggering. Sir, Kremos reported, his voice filled with awe. The human ships, they're not just surrounding the Devourers. They've created overlapping fields of fire that cover every cubic meter of space in that region. Nothing could escape that formation. The Devourer fleet, suddenly realizing they were outnumbered 4-1, began attempting to break out of the trap. Their massive ships fired in all directions, trying to punch holes in the human formation. But the humans had learned from their previous encounters with Devourer technology. Instead of trying to avoid the alien energy weapons, the human ships absorbed them. Massive collector arrays deployed from each vessel, capturing the Devourer weapon discharges and channeling them into the human ship's power systems. Impossible. Rixtal breathed as he watched the sensor readings. They're using the enemy weapons to power their own systems. The first wave of human counterattacks began 15 seconds after the Devourers opened fire. But instead of the kinetic projectiles they had used against individual ships, the human fleet deployed weapons that challenged the fundamental laws of physics. Reality itself seemed to bend around certain human vessels as they fired. Space-time distorted, gravity wells formed and collapsed in microseconds, and sections of the Devourer fleet simply ceased to exist as human weapons deleted them from reality. What kind of beings develop weapons that can unmake matter at the quantum level? Viltara ui spirit. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the civilian member of Admiral Chen's staff, was aboard the Coalition station as a liaison. The human scientist had been quietly monitoring the battle alongside the Coalition officers. Doctor, Commander Zexhai asked, what exactly are we witnessing? Dr. Mitchell turned from her instruments, and Zexhai was struck again by how deceptively fragile humans appeared. This being looked like it could be injured by a strong breeze, yet she spoke about reality-warping weapons as casually as discussing the weather. Humans evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill us, she explained matter-of-factly. So we developed technology designed to kill everything else more efficiently. The weapons you're seeing are based on principles we discovered while trying to survive ice ages, plague outbreaks, and predators that hunted us for sport. But the physics Cremos started to protest. Our guidelines, not absolute laws, Dr. Mitchell finished. When your species spends 100,000 years learning to survive in a universe that wants you dead, you get very good at finding loopholes in how that universe works. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 17 minutes and 34 seconds. When it ended, 3,000 Devourer ships had been reduced to subatomic particles that would eventually disperse throughout the cosmic background radiation. Not a single human ship reported damage. Ow! Commander Zexhai asked, staring at the tactical display that showed the complete annihilation of a force that should have been capable of conquering entire star systems. Dr. Mitchell smiled with those disturbing predator teeth. Commander, let me tell you a story about human military doctrine. About 3,000 years ago, a human general named Sun Tzu wrote that the supreme excellence of warfare consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. We've refined that principle considerably since then. You destroyed 3,000 ships without fighting? We destroyed 3,000 ships without giving them a chance to fight back, she corrected. There's a difference. The moment they chose to attack civilian targets, they stopped being an enemy to be defeated and became a problem to be solved. The implications of that statement sent chills through every being on the Coalition station. These humans didn't view warfare as a conflict between equals. They viewed it as a pest control operation. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. Coalition forces, this is Admiral Chen. The Devourer threat in this region has been permanently eliminated. Our scouts are conducting a sweep for any remaining hostiles, but initial scans suggest we got them all. Admiral, Commander Zexhai responded, that was impressive. Are there any other Devourer fleets we need to be concerned about? Actually, Commander, that's an interesting question. Dr. Mitchell, would you like to brief the Coalition on what we found during the battle? The human scientist activated a holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated the locations of dozens of other fleets scattered throughout the region. The Devourers weren't just planning to invade Coalition space, Dr. Mitchell explained. They were coordinating with at least 40 other fleets for a synchronized attack on every major civilization in this galactic sector. The scope of the revelation was staggering. The Devourers hadn't been planning a simple invasion. They had been orchestrating a coordinated genocide that would have wiped out trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. The other fleets, Commander Zexhai asked with growing dread, are they still out there? Were, Admiral Chen corrected. Human battle groups eliminated all identified Devourer concentrations approximately 4 minutes ago. The entire species appears to have been devoted to this invasion plan. With their fleets destroyed, they no longer pose a threat to anyone. Velterra's voice was barely a whisper. You eliminated an entire species in less than 20 minutes? A species that had dedicated itself to genocide, Dr. Mitchell replied calmly. Commander, humans learned long ago that some threats are too dangerous to leave partially defeated. When something proves it will murder civilians for sport, you don't negotiate with it. You don't contain it. You eliminate it completely so it can never threaten anyone again. The clinical efficiency with which the humans had solved the Devourer problem was more terrifying than the aliens' original threat had been. The Devourers had been monsters, but monsters were predictable. These humans were something else entirely. Beings who could calculate the complete extinction of a spacefaring species and carry it out with the same emotional investment they might have in solving a mathematical equation. Admiral Chun, Commander Zexhai said carefully, "What happens now?" Now we go home," came the reply. "The threat is eliminated, the coalition is safe, and humans have other projects to work on. Dr. Mitchell will remain as a liaison if the Coalition Council wants to establish formal diplomatic relations. And if the coalition chooses not to pursue diplomatic relations." There was a pause before Admiral Chen answered. "Commander, humans respect the right of other species to make their own choices. If the coalition prefers to remain isolated from human space, we'll respect that decision. But I should probably mention that this region of space is now under informal human protection." "What does that mean?" Dr. Mitchell answered this time. "It means that any species that threatens coalition worlds or citizens will receive the same treatment the Devourers just experienced. Humans are very protective of our friends." The message was clear without being threatening. The coalition was now under the protection of a species that could eliminate galactic-level threats in a matter of minutes. Whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. As the human fleet began to disperse, returning to whatever mysterious space they had come from, Commander Zexhai found himself thinking about the conversation he'd had with Captain Martinez days earlier. The human had mentioned that they came from a Deathworld, a planet where everything was trying to kill them. Now he understood what that really meant. Humans hadn't just survived on a dangerous planet. They had thrived on it. They had turned a world full of threats into a garden. And, in the process, they had become something more dangerous than anything their planet had ever thrown at them. "Sir," Velterra said quietly, "what do we tell Coalition Command?" It was a good question. How did you explain that your entire civilization had been saved by beings who looked fragile, but could unmake reality itself? How did you describe a species that viewed galaxy-threatening invasions as minor inconveniences to be solved between lunch and dinner? "We tell them the truth," he replied finally. "We tell them that humans are nothing like what we expected, and everything we could have hoped for in allies." 3 weeks later, Commander Zexhai stood in the Coalition Council chambers as Ambassador Velmoth delivered the final report on what the media had dubbed the miracle at Meridian. In conclusion, the ambassador said, addressing the assembled representatives of 47 species, "The human species appears to possess both the capability and the inclination to serve as protectors for this region of space. Their technology surpasses our understanding. Their military efficiency is unparalleled, and their stated intentions appear to be genuinely peaceful. What guarantees do we have that they won't become a threat themselves?" asked Counselor Krimval from the Tessarian delegation. Dr. Mitchell, who had been invited to address the council, stood to answer the question. In the 3 weeks since the battle, Zexhai had learned that the human scientist was actually one of the foremost experts on interspecies relations in human space. "Counselor," she began, "let me put this in perspective for you. Humans could have conquered your entire civilization any time in the past year without you even knowing we were there. We chose not to. We chose instead to protect you from a threat you couldn't have handled alone." "But why?" pressed another counselor. "What do humans gain from protecting us?" Dr. Mitchell's smile was gentler this time, though those predator teeth were still visible. "Counselor, Humans gain what we've always gained from helping others, the satisfaction of knowing we made the galaxy a better place. You see, on our world, we learned that the strongest survivors were not those who conquered everything around them, but those who built alliances and protected their communities. And if the Coalition chooses to reject human protection, asked Counselor Velhai, then we'll respect that choice, Dr. Mitchell replied. But we'll also continue to monitor this region of space. If another threat like the Devourers emerges, we'll deal with it whether you want our help or not. That's just who we are. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. The Coalition would establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity and accept their offer of protection. As the session ended and the various delegates dispersed, Commander Zexhai approached Dr. Mitchell. Doctor, may I ask you something personal? Of course, Commander. When your people first detected the Coalition's distress call from Kepler Station, why did you respond? You could have waited to see how we handled the threat ourselves. Dr. Mitchell's expression grew thoughtful. Commander, there's an old human saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good beings to do nothing. When we detected that distress call, we had a choice. We could stay hidden and safe, or we could help people who needed us. And you chose to help. We chose to be human, she corrected. For our species, there was never really a choice at all. As Zexhai watched the human scientist leave the council chambers, he reflected on how much the galaxy had changed in just a few short weeks. The Coalition had gained not just an ally, but protectors who viewed the defense of innocent life as a fundamental responsibility rather than a political decision. The galaxy was a safer place now, protected by beings who had learned to thrive in a universe that wanted them dead. Beings who had turned survival into an art form and defense of others into a natural instinct. The Coalition had called for backup, and what had arrived were Deathworld humans who had looked at a galaxy full of threats and decided to make it their personal responsibility to eliminate every single one. And, perhaps most remarkably of all, they seemed to genuinely enjoy the work. Years later, when historians wrote about the first contact between humanity and the Galactic Coalition, they would struggle to explain how a species that looked so vulnerable had proven to be the most formidable force in known space. The answer, as Dr. Mitchell had tried to explain to the Council, lay in understanding what it meant to evolve on a world where everything wanted to kill you. It meant learning to be more dangerous than everything else. But it also meant learning to value life, all life, because survival had always depended on cooperation and mutual protection. Humans had spent 100,000 years learning to be the apex predators of a death world. Then they had spent another 10,000 years learning to use that deadly efficiency to protect instead of destroy. The galaxy was fortunate that when they finally ventured into space, they had chosen to be guardians rather than conquerors. And the Devourers had been unfortunate enough to discover what happened when Deathworld Guardians decided you were a threat to their friends. In the end, it really had been just another Tuesday for humanity. But for everyone else, it was the day they learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe was also the safest thing to have on your side. The Coalition had requested backup. What had arrived was something infinitely more valuable, a species that would never let them face the darkness alone again. And in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, that was perhaps the most remarkable discovery of all.